Yo, Atlas speaking, and welcome to part 1 of What If I Was Reborn in Naruto as a civilian ninja, stuck in a time loop with the gamer system. Synopsis: Reborn in the Naruto world, the MC finds himself in the middle of the Third Shinobi World War. Finding out that he is merely Gennin cannon fodder who failed his Jonin sensei exam and was sent to the Gennin Corps and from there sent directly to the battlefield merely a month later. Finding himself with only the 3 basic academy Jutsu and meager Chakra, Kazuo strives to change his fate before heading into a mission only a few hours later. Finding himself and his team members ambushed by a cloud Gennin team that outnumbers them with 4 more members compared to his 3-man squad. Dying at their hands, Kazuo finds himself face to face with death itself, telling him to give up. However, he doesn't, and thus he finds himself back at the start of the day with some sort of gamer system. Knowing how the future would cast out to be, Kazuo starts planning. The story revolves around Kazuo as he works hard and dies over and over again but never gives up. Will Kazuo survive, or will he remain an unknown shinobi with his name inscribed on the Will of Fire memorial stone? Make sure to support the author linked in the description and give him a follow. Anyways, without further ado, let the tale begin. Chapter 1. In a world where war was constantly happening, where it was a matter of when and not if. Even now, a war is happening inside the world. The people call it the Third Great Shinobi World War. Inside a small country called the Land of Hot Water, a camp of ninjas stood. They all carried headbands with a leaf symbol inscribed on them. And inside this camp of ninjas was a small tent where a child of only 12 years of age. It was at this moment that the young kid woke up suddenly. Huff huff. Turning his head left and right, the young ninja looked at his surroundings in surprise. Where am I? He thought as he tried to make sense of his current location. However, he came up with a blank. At least until a few moments later when he felt the start of a major headache. It started slowly, but after a few seconds, the headache ramped up, almost overwhelming him completely, causing the ninja to hold his head in pain and gather himself almost in a ball from the pain he was experiencing. Am Kazuo? A Gennin of the Hidden Leaf Village? Kazuo questioned himself as if doubting what he was seeing as memories flashed through his mind. Am in the world of Naruto? Kazuo thought as shivers ran down his spine. No way. This is some prank. It has to be some kind of elaborate prank, Kazuo thought as he quickly jumped from the bed, his headache practically forgotten at the piece of shocking news. Heading to the entrance of the tent, Kazuo almost ripped the fabric apart as he went outside to look at his surroundings. As soon as he was out of the tent, Kazuo stopped. His eyes grew wide, and shock and horror appeared in his expression. All around him stood tens upon tens of similar green tents, but that wasn't what shocked Kazuo. It was the screams of people, the bloody smell in the air. It's true, Kazuo thought. His mind had turned into a mess as he looked around at the roaming ninjas. Their expressions looked grim as they walked, their clothes adorned with patches of blood and their hands almost completely scarred. Some had even lost their eyes, while others had deep scars that went through the entirety of their face. Quickly, Kazuo turned around and headed back into his tent, his mind working on overdrive as he tried to adapt to the situation he had found himself in. Sitting back on his bed once more, Kazuo started thinking. I'm inside the world of Naruto. My name is Kazuo, and am a Gennin from the Gennin Corps of the Hidden Leaf. I failed my Jonin sensei exam last month and only a month later was sent to the front line against the Hidden Cloud. It is currently the era of the Third World War and Hiruzen is still the Hokage. Kazuo thought as he took everything in, analyzing the memories he had gained. I currently have low Gennin level chakra reserves and only know the 3 academy Jutsu, and even those are only at the basic level. How the fuck am I supposed to survive in this shithole? Where's my damn chi? Kazuo thought as he pressed his temples in anger. It was at this moment that the entrance of his tent was opened and a young man came inside. He was about 20 years of age with brown spike hair that went all the way to his shoulders. Kazuo, we've got a patrolling mission. Get ready in 10 minutes and come to the entrance of the camp. The man said before quickly turning around and heading off. That's Kenji Ono, a Chunin and the leader of my 3-man patrolling team whilst I'm here in the front line, Kazuo thought before standing up and turning to look around his tent. Having the memories of the past owner of this body was great, as he quickly found all of his combat gear and outfitted himself. Turning around, Kazuo found a mirror next to his belongings. Taking it into his hands, he looked at his new face. With black spiky hair that went down to his neck and completely black eyes, he looked like the typical Uchiha if he had to say so himself. Though his features were more average when compared to the clan members. At least I'm not ugly, Kazuo thought to himself sarcastically before releasing a long-winded sigh. Putting the mirror back into his backpack, Kazuo turned around and headed out of the tent, and started going toward the entrance of the camp where his team would be waiting for him. Kenji Ono, the leader of the group, a Chunin-level ninja with below-standard chakra reserves for his rank. Overall, he is only a Chunin because it is wartime, and in peace times he would have still been a Gennin at most. Kazuo thought before starting to think about the last member of their group. It was another kid who had failed his Jonin sensei exam and been sent to the Corps, where he had first met Kazuo. Yaso Arakawa, similarly to Kenji the guy, is a civilian-birth ninja with low to almost no accomplishments in the ninja academy. With short black hair and brown eyes, he was the typical cannon fodder. Kazuo thought as he walked through the camp. After a minute or so, Kazuo arrived at the camp's entrance, where he saw ninjas patrolling and on guard duty, as well as others that kept coming in and out of the camp as they finished or started this mission, just like Kazuo was about to start his own. Looking around, he quickly found his teammates and headed to them. Hey! Hey, you're right on time, Kazuo. It's just a simple patrolling mission, so there's not much to explain in mission details. Let's just get started immediately so we can complete this quickly, Kenji said as he waved at Kazuo whilst Yaso stood silent, merely giving Kazuo a nod. Chapter 2, Kazuo nodded at Kenji and the group started heading out of the ninja camp. As they ran out of the camp, Kenji and Yaso started jumping onto the trees and hopping from one tree to the other. This was an essential skill for all hidden leaf shinobi. It helped them immensely when they were in their own territory or when inside a forest when compared to ninjas from other great villages. Kazuo looked at the backs of his two teammates before quickly jumping onto a tree branch. Thankfully, with the memories of this body, he could emulate and do whatever the past Kazuo had been able to. As the group ran in a triangle formation with Kenji at the front, they started this patrolling route. The route that the group usually goes on is about 4 kilometers from the camp entrance, and from there, we complete a full circle around the perimeter, after which we are done for the day and return back to the camp, Kazuo thought as he followed behind his leader. The first 20 or so minutes of the patrol went calmly as the group concentrated and kept their guard up against any signs of danger. However, it seemed luck wasn't on Kazuo's side today, as, at the 21st minute, something did happen. Suddenly, as they were hopping from tree to tree, Kenji stopped on a tree branch abruptly. And in the tree branch where he had been about to jump to, tens of kunai had been embedded into merely a split second later. Enemy attack, Kenji quickly said as he raised his guard up even further. Kazuo and Yaso stopped right behind him, each on a different tree branch, as they started looking around for the attacker. It's an ambush. All 3 of us are civilian ninjas, so we don't have any special methods of tracking. None of us are even sensors. Kazuo quickly thought as he looked around the trees before he noticed something heading towards them. Explosive kunai! Kazuo screamed before jumping away from the tree branch he was at currently. Kenji quickly followed and jumped away from the location. However, Yaso was too slow in his reaction speed. Kazuo saw the kunai with a paper tag attached to it fly directly to where Yaso was. The paper tag had already started burning, and when Yaso tried to escape and jump away, it was already too late. Boom! With a loud booming sound, the explosive tag exploded, destroying everything in a 5-meter radius, Yaso included. Kazuo saw it clearly, the face of his teammate as the explosion hit and ripped his body apart, as half of his body was erased from the explosion, blood splattering everywhere. Fuck, Kazuo thought before he quickly turned to where the kunai had been launched from. North, 15 degrees toward the south. Kazuo quickly shouted out the direction from where he had seen the kunai being thrown from. Kenji nodded his head and quickly started running toward the location. Kazuo looked at the man for a moment before shaking his head. What the fuck are you doing? We're only 2 people and you're just going to go ahead and first? Kazuo thought to himself as thoughts of retreating alone immediately filled his head. However, he shook his head merely a moment later. I could be considered a deserter and killed immediately after. Jumping from the tree branch, Kazuo quickly followed Kenji for a few hundred meters before he saw Kenji fall down to the grass below. Joining him on the ground, the two found themselves in a small clearing inside the forest. Looking around, Kazuo found nothing besides silence. However, that was a clear indicator that something was wrong. I can't hear anything, this is a Genjutsu, Kazuo thought almost immediately. Putting his hands together, Kazuo quickly disrupted his chakra system. However, nothing happened, and the silence still remained. Is my chakra control too low? Kazuo thought next as he looked at Kenji, looking around for any sign of the attackers. Taking out a kunai from his backpack, Kazuo pierced his leg slightly. At that moment, he started hearing sounds once more, and there right before Kenji was a ninja. Kenji didn't even notice the enemy who was right in front of him. However, even Kazuo had been too late in releasing the Genjutsu. Slitch! Pain erupted from Kazuo's back, and at the same time, he saw the ninja sever Kenji's head, it falling down to the ground together with his body whilst blood erupted into the air, almost like a water fountain. He himself saw the ground closing in as he fell down. Turning his eyesight to the back, he saw another ninja. It was a kid, someone who couldn't be older and was maybe even younger than Kazuo himself. He had a scared look on his face as he held a kunai in his hands, which were trembling as he looked at Kazuo, who had fallen onto the ground. At this moment, another person appeared and started patting the young kid's shoulder. You did good, Aoki, the man said. He was large with a muscular frame and short blonde hair. A Cloud Village symbol adorned his headband. This fucker, am his first kill, aren't I? Kazuo thought, however, he could even talk out loud as blood filled his mouth and throat. However, next time you have to remember to finish the job, Aoki. This is war and all of these wretches are nothing but that, pieces of shit who deserve to die, the man said before taking out a short sword from his back and getting closer to Kazuo. Grabbing Kazuo's hair, he held him up before giving him a bloody smile. Any last words, tree hugger? The man said as he held Kazuo up with one hand, whilst holding the short sword in the other. Kazuo looked at him as immense hatred radiated from his eyes. He was mad at the man, angered at the young ninja, and before all of that, he was furious at the whole situation, at having been reincarnated into this shitty world. Opening his mouth, blood leaked out as it dripped down all the way to Kazuo's chin. Your mother will miss me, Kazuo said before his expression turned into a smile and he spat onto the man's face. This seemed to anger the Cloud Ninja as he raised his short sword and cleanly severed Kazuo's head. Chapter 3 Darkness took over Kazuo's sight as he felt an unbearable pain hit him for a split second as the sword severed his head. And then it was all gone and he found himself in a completely different location. Looking around, Kazuo found that he was on a small wooden boat floating in a dark sea. It wasn't just the sea, in fact, it was everything around him. It looked like he was floating in the middle of the sea inside some kind of abyss. It was at this moment that Kazuo saw something. Behind him, there was someone who was rowing the boat. It was a large creature, more than 3 meters tall, with a black robe covering his entire body and face. At that moment, as Kazuo was looking at the creature, it spoke to him. Why do you resent death so much? And here you shall forever be calm and sleep peacefully for all of eternity. The thing spoke with a gravelly deep voice. Kazuo looked at the creature for a moment before he furrowed his brows, anger overtaking his expression. Fuck that. The creature seemed taken aback for a moment before it released a long-winded laugh. It was so eerie that it sent shivers down Kazuo's spine. You shall come back again, for it is your destiny. The thing spoke before Kazuo saw himself disappearing, his body turning into specks of light. Merely a few moments later, Kazuo disappeared completely. Huff huff. Inside a tent in the Hidden Leaf frontline camp, a young ninja was huffing as if he had just awoken from a terrible nightmare. It was Kazuo. What the fuck, Kazuo thought as he looked around him. This is my tent at the camp? Wasn't I just dead? Kazuo thought before something interrupted any further thoughts he might have had. Ding! User has unlocked the time loop system. Time loop system? Is this my cheat? Kazuo thought quickly as he read the text that had appeared in front of him on a holographic blue screen. A moment later, a new holographic panel appeared before Kazuo. Menu. Stats. Quests. There were only two options in this menu screen, the Stats tab and the Quests tab. Is this just a weakened version of the gamer? Kazuo thought before opening his Status tab. Stats. Name, Kazuo. Age, 12. Race, human. Strength, D. Endurance, D. Agility, D. Intelligence, B. Charisma, C. Skills. Time loop, level 1. Academy Taijutsu, level 8 out of 10. Academy Shurikenjutsu, level 9 out of 10. Clone Jutsu, level 5 out of 10. Substitution Jutsu, level 5/10. Transformation Jutsu, level 5/10. Looking over the information on his status screen, Kazuo was disappointed, to say the least. What the fuck are these shitty-ass stats? Did this guy just sleep the entire time in the academy? Kazuo thought. Sigh. Releasing a long sigh, Kazuo quickly calmed his emotions down. So I have a time loop system, which means that every time I die, I return to the start of that day. In less than an hour, I'll be dead, having died at the hands of a wimpy bitch, Kazuo thought as he remembered the young kid who had killed him whilst his hands shook. Fuck, Kazuo thought as anger surged into his head every time he thought of the event. At this moment, as Kazuo sat on his bed, he saw Kenji walk into the tent and inform him of the upcoming patrol mission. First, let's test out what will happen if I'm late to the mission. Maybe that way I'll be able to escape the encounter with the Cloud Ninjas. From what I saw, that guy who severed my head is most likely a Jonin sensei. Right now I have no way of actually killing him, Kazuo thought as he stood up from his bed and started getting his combat outfit back on. Opening the next tab of the system whilst he did so. Quests. Survive the first day. Reward, C rank elemental jutsu. That was the only thing on the tab. Reading over the quest, Kazuo furrowed his brows. I gain a C rank jutsu if I complete it, but if I don't then I just die? Kazuo thought in frustration. There was no penalty shown on the quest, but just by reading the name of the quest, you would know how the only way to fail this quest was. Dying. Dying in a ditch in the middle of some backwater country. Kazuo took his time as he got dressed up in his combat clothes instead of rushing like he had the previous turn. By the time he was done, 10 minutes had already passed. Turning around, Kazuo started walking to the entrance of the camp at an extremely slow pace, as if he were a civilian with no chakra taking a stroll around the local park. Sigh. Releasing a sigh as he walked, Kazuo thought back to the last 2 hours. He had woken up in a world that he thought was only fiction, and he had already died a gruesome death once. However, Kazuo didn't have time to contemplate or whine about his circumstances. He had no time to cry about what he had been thrust into. He either had to adapt and advance forward or lose his mind as he died over and the same day repeated itself. Death had already told him that it was his destiny, however Kazuo had never believed that shit. My destiny? You know, that sounds a lot like something Neji would say. Kazuo thought as a grin appeared on his face. Only to disappear a moment later as Kazuo got serious once more. I'll survive, no matter what. Chapter 4. It was only 20 minutes after Kenji had told him about the mission that Kazuo arrived at the meetup point at the camp's entrance. Kenji had a frown on his face as he gave a sharp look at Kazuo, who simply waltzed in front of them, not even pretending to be hurried as he walked toward them. What took you so long? Ensure that I told you to come here in 10 minutes. It's been 20, Kazuo, Kenji said. His voice clearly showed his frustration, and Kazuo's attitude didn't seem to be helping either. Sorry, I saw a black cat cross the road so I had to take a longer route, Kazuo said as he pretended to be embarrassed whilst scratching the back of his head. Kenji and Yeso simply looked at him whilst they judged him in their minds. Never mind, you're here now, let's just get on with this mission and complete it quickly, Kenji said before he started running out of the camp with Yeso and Kazuo following quickly behind him. As they ran, Kazuo's mind was filled with ways that he could halt the duo or just escape this mission. At that moment an idea flashed in Kazuo's mind which he quickly decided to execute. As they were running, Kazuo acted as if he slipped from the tree branch, falling down onto the ground. As he fell, Kazuo put his leg forward in an awkward position. Hitting the ground like this will break my ankle, making it impossible for me to carry on with this mission. Kazuo thought as a small smile emerged on his face whilst the ground started getting closer and closer until finally he fell down onto the ground. Kenji and Yeso quickly stopped and jumped down, trying to see what had happened. Looking at Kazuo, they quickly noticed his broken ankle which had a bone sticking out. It looked quite gruesome. Meanwhile, Kazuo was making a grimacing expression as he thought. Fuck, I didn't think it would hurt this much. Dumb fucking plan. What happened? Did someone attack you? Kenji asked as he looked around them cautiously. His hand had already grasped a kunai from his small ninja tool bag that he had tied behind his back. Slowly Kazuo shook his head. No, I slipped. Those words caused both Kenji and Yeso to freeze. Silence overtook the two, with the only sound being the grunts of Kazuo who tried to withstand the pain. Fucking bastards, help me get to a medical ninja already, Kazuo thought as he looked at the two. It was only a few moments later that Kenji asked, his voice clearly showing his confusion. You slipped? The man asked, his face colored in disbelief as he looked at his subordinate. Yes, Captain, now can you help get me back to the camp again and get some medical attention already? Breaking your ankle and being able to see your bones covered with blood isn't very fun, you know? Kazuo finally said as he got fed up with the duo who weren't doing anything. That seemed to bring the two out of their stupor as they crouched and both grabbed Kazuo's arms, hoisting him up whilst they made sure not to touch his ankle or let it touch the ground so that it wouldn't get damaged even further. Then, with the two holding him, they started getting back to the camp. Thankfully they hadn't run too far away, so the camp was still quite close. Arriving 5 minutes later, the two went back in through the front gate whilst the guards looked at them weirdly. One of them even came up and asked if something had happened, only to learn that Kazuo had slipped. My reputation in this camp is about to go to shit, but who cares if I'm dead then? Reputation means nothing, Kazuo thought as he bore the pain. A few moments later, he arrived at the medical tent where he was quickly laid down onto a stretcher and brought inside. Everywhere he looked inside the tent, Kazuo could see badly injured ninjas. Some had lost their eyes, some had lost their legs or arms, and some had even lost their ears or noses from what looked like explosions. Most of them, however, had gotten cut or wounded cleanly from the looks of it. Probably because of the inherent sharpness in lightning release jutsu and the fact that a lot of cloud ninjas use swords, Kazuo thought before he saw a young kunoichi wearing a medical ninja outfit come close to him. She didn't speak to him and merely took hold of his leg with her hands and then pushed the bones back into his body. A loud scream pierced out of Kazuo as he felt indescribable pain when the woman put his ankle bone back inside his body. What the fuck is this bitch doing? Kazuo thought through the immense pain. A second later, he saw her hands glow green before she started healing him with what was most likely mystical palm medical jutsu. Lifting his head slightly so that he could see, Kazuo saw the wound in his ankle healing at a visible speed. Damn cheats. I want to do that too. Kazuo thought as he stared at the medical kunoichi hatefully for a split second before shaking his head. Sigh. Releasing a sigh, Kazuo thought of what he would have to do next. I'm getting too emotional. That needs to be something I check on constantly and learn to control better. This is a place where I can whine or get angry. I need to learn how to control my emotions perfectly so that others can't exploit me with them, Kazuo thought as he saw the kunoichi turn toward him. You'll have a 3-day break. Don't do anything strenuous during these 3 days and you will be back in combat-ready condition, she said before turning around and heading to her next patient. Getting up from his bed, Kazuo headed outside of the medical tent. Chapter 5, Walking around, Kazuo saw the ninjas around the camp as they went about their daily duties. Some were sparring against each other, some watched them, some went on about their duties of patrolling, and some headed back to their tents to get some rest. It wasn't a pretty sight. He saw hundreds upon hundreds of people, of men, women, and even what people called children in his world, preparing to fight others to the death for some deranged concept of helping out their country, of protecting their homes and friends. Protecting them, as if Kazuo sneered as he thought back to the Konoha leaders. Hiruzen was a disgrace of a Hokage, someone who was meant to be the strongest and more charismatic leader had been turned into a puppet by Danzo. That bastard can do anything he wants and he will never get punished, and then there's this war. The Senju clan has all but disappeared because of those two old wretches, and now the world views Konoha as weak. If it wasn't because of those two, then things would have been completely different, Kazuo thought as he headed back to his tent. Once inside, Kazuo started rummaging through his belongings once more, trying to find anything of use. A while later, he had put everything that he had found that he thought could be useful. And by everything, he meant one thing only. It was a blue scroll that held the knowledge of how to perform the C-rank jutsu, Water Bullet. At least it's better than not having anything, Kazuo thought before he opened the scroll and started reading through it. Hours passed as Kazuo delved deeply into the scroll, and night had almost fallen upon the world, the sun already setting as it cast its orange glow on the world. It was at this moment that Kazuo, who had been reading the scroll, heard a loud sound. It sounded like a ginormous explosion that shook the very ground. Quickly hopping onto his feet, Kazuo grabbed his weapon pack and jumped outside of the tent quickly. He saw it get engulfed in flames merely a second later after he had jumped. Fuck, what is this shitty luck, Kazuo thought as he quickly looked around, trying to find out what the hell was happening. All around him, Kazuo saw ninjas fighting each other, explosions rocking the world, and flames erupting all around as tents caught on fire from either jutsus or the explosion tags. Those fucking cloud ninjas, Kazuo thought before he quickly turned and started running to the edge of the camp. As if I'm going to fight when I have a broken ankle, Kazuo thought. However, he was soon forced to stop in place as an enemy ninja appeared before him. It was the same guy, the same damned guy who had killed him the last turn when he was out on patrol. What do we have here, a little tree hugger? The man said with that same annoying voice of his. So the reason why we met him so close to the camp was that they were getting rid of all patrols and making sure that the camp wasn't ready for their ambush. Does that mean that I'm doomed to fight him when I'm on patrol? Kazuo thought he didn't even get a kunai out of his weapon bag. Did you give up already? I always knew that the tree huggers were scared bitches, the man said with a short laugh before he started running toward Kazuo with a smile on his face. As he came close, the man plunged his sword into Kazuo's stomach. Sneering into Kazuo's face, the man's expression seemed to say that this was what he expected from him, nothing more. It was at this moment that Kazuo moved unexpectedly, grasping the man's arms and bringing him closer. A large smile erupted on Kazuo's face as he looked at the man. "Am afraid?" Kazuo said as the sword plunged even deeper into his stomach. The Jonin's expression twisted as he looked at the crazed expression on Kazuo's face. Alarm bells were ringing in his head. However, no matter what he tried, Kazuo wouldn't let go of his arm. It was at this moment that he heard the young kid before him mutter a single but frightening word that sent shivers down his spine. Kai. As dread erupted inside the Jonin's mind, it was already too late. A thunderous explosion occurred as Kazuo's body together with the Jonin was devoured by it and almost erased from existence. Kazuo's last thoughts were simple. Who's scared now? And once more Kazuo found himself back inside his tent, his breath coming in harsh huffs as he looked like he had awoken from a bad nightmare. After a few moments, Kazuo managed to calm himself down and slowed down his breaths. Being exploded really isn't fun, that hurts more than having your head severed, Kazuo said as he rubbed his arms, which were covered in goosebumps at the memory of the pain he had experienced in his last moments. And Kinji promptly appeared once more and told him about their patrol mission. We have a... Before he could finish, Kazuo interrupted him. Patrol mission, in 10 minutes at the front entrance, I know. Kinji stopped and looked at him weirdly for a moment before nodding his head and heading out of the tent. Turning around, Kazuo wore his combat outfit for the third time before starting to head toward the front entrance of the camp once more. I'll just have to push through the fight in the patrol and come back, or I could even let these two guys become bait and survive myself so that I come back to the camp and tell them about the incoming ambush. Kazuo thought as he arrived at the front entrance of the ninja camp. "Hey!" Kenji said as he gave Kazuo a wave of his hand. And after a short talk, they headed out of the camp once more. Chapter 6. Hopping from tree to tree, Kazuo followed Kenji and Yeso from behind, his mind working on overdrive as he tried to come up with a solution. Seeing the tree branch where Yeso had died during the first turn, Kazuo immediately stopped, causing the other two to stop almost at the same time. "What's wrong, Kazuo?" Kenji asked immediately as he turned to look at Kazuo. "There is an ambush up ahead, in the direction of northwest. They will attack us soon enough. We can't beat them, they have a Jonin in their ranks," Kazuo said before turning to look in the direction he had just told them the ambushers were in. "How do you know that?" Yeso spoke for the first time since he had met him on the first turn. "I can sense their chakra, and that guy has more than triple of Kenji's chakra." Kenji turned doubtful eyes toward Kazuo, however after a moment of contemplation he nodded his head. "Alright, we'll go back to camp and report this quickly. Better to be safe than dead in some ditch." Kazuo and Yeso nodded their head, relief tore through Kazuo's mind at seeing the captain make a smart decision. "Good, this way the camp will know of these guys, however they won't know that an ambush for the whole camp is going to happen near sunset." Kazuo thought to himself, however he shook his head, deciding to see how this turn would end up. Turning around, the group started heading back to camp, and 20 minutes later they returned once more. The trio headed to the camp commander's tent immediately. They got stopped at the tent's entrance where a guard asked them what they needed. "We have to talk with the commander quickly. There was an enemy ambush less than 4 kilometers away from the camp," Kazuo spoke quickly before Kenji could even utter out any words. Seeing the urgency in Kazuo's voice, the man nodded his head quickly and let them through. Once inside the tent, Kazuo saw that it was much bigger than his own and even had a large wooden table in the middle with a huge map placed on top of it. Documents and files of all types were scattered around the tent, and sitting on a chair behind the large wooden table was a man with black hair that was tied up in a ponytail. Kazuo immediately knew what clan the ninja was from his looks. "A Nara, if I'm not wrong then his name is Shikaru Nara," Kazuo thought before Kenji walked to the front of the group and started talking with Shikaru, explaining the situation to him. After a few moments of talk, the commander turned toward Kazuo and looked at him intently for a few moments. "You're a sensei?" the man asked as he stared at Kazuo. "Yes, sir, though my range is quite limited, however the group was close enough that even I could sense them lying in ambush." "I see. I'll send an Umbu team to check up on the location. You will go with them and lead them to the destination," Shikaru said to Kazuo. This wasn't a request, it was an order. "Yes, sir," Kazuo said immediately. A thought whirred through Shikaru's mind as he looked at the young shinobi before him. His reply was fast, almost too fast. And the fact that he managed to keep the fact that he was a sensei from everyone until now is suspicious. The village should have already known, but there is nothing on his file about it. "I'll have to keep an eye out. I'll tell the Umbu to observe him closely as well," Shikaru thought as he looked at Kazuo and nodded his head. At that moment, Shikaru started flaring his chakra in timed pulses, and merely a few seconds later 5 ninja wearing gray outfits and masks on their faces appeared before him. "Team Hawk, you will take this young ninja. He will lead you to a spot where it is suspected a group of cloud shinobi are lying in wait. Eliminate them all and come back," Shikaru said to the 5 who nodded their head and turned toward Kazuo, motioning for him to follow them. Quickly Kazuo nodded his head and started running after them, using chakra to enhance his speed, but even then, he felt like a damn snail when compared to the Umbu ahead of him. They weren't even using Shunshin anymore, and he still couldn't even come close to the 5 as they headed out of the camp and jumped from tree to tree. After 15 minutes, with Kazuo having slowed the team down significantly, the group arrived at the location where the ambush was once more. Kazuo quickly pointed out the location of where he had met the enemy ninjas on the first turn. One of the Umbu wearing a hawk mask came forward and nodded his head, quickly forming some hand seals with one hand. "He's communicating with the team using hand signs and not using a jutsu," Kazuo quickly figured out as the rest of the Umbu made sets of hand signs quickly before what looked like the captain nodded and disappeared from the location with 2 other Umbu, leaving Kazuo and 2 others back. "I have to learn the Shunshin," that Jutsu's usability is probably one of the highest if not the highest in the entire series. Kazuo thought as he stared in the direction of the forest clearing. It was only a few seconds later when he heard the sounds of fighting. Boom clang. Booming sounds were heard as well as the sounds of blades clashing against one another, the forest lighting up on fire from the jutsus and spreading around quickly. 1 minute and 40 seconds, that was how long Kazuo counted before he saw the Umbu come back once more. In 1 minute and 40 seconds, they dispatched a Jonin and at least 2 other Gennin if not more. Is this what an Umbu is capable of? Kazuo thought as he stared at the group, shivers running down his spine. Chapter 7, a short moment later, the Umbu motioned for Kazuo to follow them and they started returning back to the camp. Another 15 minutes later, which for Kazuo was hell. He could barely keep up with the Umbu even when he ran as fast as he could. His physical stats were much lower than those of the Umbu and it clearly showed. What the fuck was this kid doing? You live in a world where death is your next door neighbor and you just live carefree? Kazuo thought to himself as he followed the group. Finally seeing the entrance of the camp, Kazuo felt a sense of relief pour over him as he passed by the gates and into the camp. He didn't have time to stop or take a breath, however, as he had to go directly to the commander's camp together with the Umbu team to report the end of the short mission. Arriving at the tent, the guard didn't stop him this time, seeing that he was together with a team of Umbu, and he merely gave the group a nod. Usually, he wouldn't even see them, however, since Kazuo was with them, they had slowed down their speed by several stages. Once inside the commander's tent, Kazuo saw the commander Shikara Nara once more. Kazuo stood at the back of the group as the team leader of the Umbu. The man with the hawk mask went ahead of the group and started explaining. The information was true. There was a Cloud Gennin team together with their Jonin sensei lying in ambush at the spot where Gennin Kazuo mentioned they were. We quickly dispatched the group, only leaving one Gennin alive before interrogating him quickly. However, we didn't delve too deeply into his mind and quickly dispatched him as well before returning. The Umbu captain said before placing a scroll on the wooden table. The bodies are in the scroll for the Yamanaka at the camp to investigate further and see if they can find anything further, though it is doubtful. The man said before taking a step back and awaiting the commander's words. Good job, you can go back to your post, Shikaru said, dismissing the Umbu before turning to look at Kazuo and giving him a nod. What you did today was of great help to us. You will be rewarded with a C-rank mission reward. You can take the resources after the war is over, or if you go back to the village at the fund's administration office inside the Hokage Tower, Shikaru said, clearly dismissing Kazuo. Kazuo nodded his head and quickly turned around, heading back to his tent. Meanwhile, as soon as Kazuo went away, Shikaru made a hand motion and the Umbu captain appeared once more. Did you find anything suspicious? No, sir. He displayed normal behavior, so nothing could be discerned. If you want, we can send a Yamanaka to delve into his mind and investigate further. The Umbu captain said in a formal tone as he addressed his commander. Shikaru seemed to think for a moment before shaking his head. No, leave it for now. What information did you gain from your investigation? We managed to gather information about a full-brunt ambush on the camp. It's planned to happen today during sunset. There will be around 200 Cloud Ninjas coming to the ambush. We don't have any information on how many Jonin or Chunin will take part. The Umbu captain said, his voice clearly deeper, saying what could possibly be the cause of the entire camp's eradication. Shikaru lifted his hand and rubbed his temple. What a drag. For a few moments, silence remained before Shikaru lifted his head once more. Gather all the Umbu troops that are available and also inform all the team captains. Tell everyone in the camp to be combat ready and to be on guard and available to enter combat at any second. Next, you and 3 other Umbu teams will use Earth Jutsu and hide underground and hide yourself. When the enemy attacks, wait for them to fully enter the camp before attacking their backs. This will make it so that they are the ones surrounded and not us. There's nothing else we can do on such short notice. Shikaru said as he released a sigh. Yes, sir. The Umbu captain said before he quickly shined out of the tent. On the other side of the camp, Kazuo had entered the training area of the camp, deciding that it was more worth training than simply waiting for the inevitable ambush. Kazuo didn't start trying to learn the water bullet jutsu, however. Trying to do that right now is simply a waste of chakra. I need that if I want to survive the ambush. If everything I did today still fails and I die, then I should start concentrating on increasing my strength and proficiency of the jutsu every turn until I grow strong enough, but let's hope that it doesn't have to come to that, Kazuo thought before starting to make hand signs. However, he didn't put any chakra in the motions, simply practicing the hand signs and trying to increase his familiarity with them. He could do everything that the old owner of this body could, however there was still a small time frame as his body executed the moves, and Kazuo hoped to remove that as well as grow more familiar with the new body he was in. At first, he started with hand signs and then with taijutsu, shuriken jutsu, and lastly, he did some stretches so that he was in top condition for when the ambush would start. And it was going to be any time now. As he had taken a few hours practicing everything and the sun had already started to set. Looking at his ninja bag which he had tied to his waist, Kazuo thought. 5 kunai, 10 shuriken, 3 explosion tag kunai, and 5 explosion tags. I also have 2 soldier pills that I could use to regenerate my chakra in the middle of combat. Overall it's not bad, however I'll have to be careful of when I use them with my limited supply. At this moment, as those thoughts occurred in Kazuo's mind, an explosion erupted on the other side of the camp. It started. Chapter 8. The moment the explosions happened, Kazuo quickly turned and looked in the direction of the entrance of the camp. There he could see flames engulfing tents and sounds of blades clashing against one another. Every few seconds, one would be able to see lightning flashes from the Cloud Ninja's jutsu. Kazuo didn't rush to help, and neither did he go directly to the edge of the camp. He knew that those were the most dangerous places. It's likely that the entire camp is surrounded by enemy ninjas. There really is nowhere to hide, Kazuo thought before taking out a kunai from his bag and entering a combat stance. He didn't move from his spot at all. He was in the training grounds, and quite a few ninjas were around him who quickly followed his actions and took their weapons out or simply assumed taijutsu stances. It's always better to have meat shields, Kazuo thought as a smile erupted on his face. However, it kept constantly twitching as he swore profanities at the situation he was in. It didn't take long at all for the first enemy ninjas to appear. It was a group of roughly 20 ninjas who had come from the southern edge of the camp. With Kazuo included, they had 17 ninjas, giving the enemy a numerical advantage. Taking a deep breath, Kazuo calmed his emotions as he stared at the enemy in the eyes. There was a moment of silence for but a second before chaos ensued. Wrath, a hidden leaf ninja, shouted at the top of his lungs before he charged at the enemy. Soon both groups charged at each other, the leaf kunai clashing with the cloud's blades, but a moment later. Kazuo had remained at the back, however even he found his opponent soon enough. It was a kid of around 12 years of age, just like him. He had dark skin and dreaded white hair with a cloud headband tied to his shoulder and a short sword in his hand. The kid charged at Kazuo immediately, swinging his short sword toward his neck. Using the kunai, Kazuo quickly intercepted the strike only to find himself losing in a battle of power. Right, I'm in the body of a shitty kid, Kazuo thought before he took out another kunai from his bag alongside an explosion tag. Crumpling up the tag, he hid it in his hand whilst clenching the kunai. Now with a weapon in both hands, Kazuo started swinging at the ninja. However, his experience with bladed weapons clearly was higher than Kazuo's as he deflected each strike with his short sword before giving Kazuo a nasty slice on his abdomen. Taking a few jumps backward, Kazuo looked at his wound with the edges of his eyesight before turning to give a glare to the ninja once more. Is that a kitchen knife? Do you Cloud Ninja not have enough money to even buy real swords? Kazuo said with a grin as he faced the kid, trying to make him lose his cool. And in the next instant, the expression the kid showed quickly changed to one of rage. You tree fucker, the kid screamed almost before rushing toward Kazuo once more. While Kazuo had looked as if he was angry on the outside, his thoughts were completely calm. Knowing that this wasn't truly a life or death situation for him had made it possible for him to control his emotions much more easily. He's inexperienced, losing your cool against your enemy so easily. Kazuo thought as he tried his hardest to deflect the kid's strikes. However, he still ended up with cuts all over his body merely a few seconds into the clash. Is that all you have? I thought you Cloud Shinobi were great at swords. I guess it was just a lie after all, Kazuo said once more, angering the young shinobi even further. I'll kill you, the kid said as veins sprouted on his forehead, his swings growing even stronger and faster. However, he had already started to lose his form. If he struck with this much power and speed while maintaining his sword forms, then I would have already been killed. I need to use both kunai to block his strikes now, Kazuo thought, and though the situation seemed grim for him, he didn't feel despair. Instead, it was elation that he felt. Finally, after a few more strikes, the Cloud Ninja managed to bring Kazuo down onto the ground. Just as he was about to strike him, the Cloud Shinobi showed a large smile on his face, as if what he was doing was true retribution. At that moment he saw something unexpected. The ninja under him, Kazuo, had a wide smile on his face. I knew you would save me, Captain. His words caused the kid's eyes to shrink back as he quickly jumped away in a hurry, turning to look backward only to find nothing. There was no enemy ninja. His anger clouded him even further as he turned his head around only to see Kazuo already up on his feet and close to him, running directly at him. The ninja quickly pulled his short sword in front of him as he stopped the kunai that Kazuo was swinging toward him in a vertical swing. Clang! What he didn't take into account for, however, was that Kazuo had used only one hand instead of two for the swing. His other hand was empty, however, and so he hadn't put much mind to it, only to see Kazuo throw something in his face. When Kazuo had crumpled up the explosion tag, he had done so that the inscribed seals were on the inside and the adhesive was on the outside. Thus, when he threw it at the enemy ninja's head, it managed to get caught in his hair. Quickly, Kazuo fell backwards before making the rat hand seal. Kai, bitch! At his shout, the explosion tag lit up before quickly exploding, causing a shower of blood and brain matter to cover the ground. The headless body of the kid fell down to the ground with a thump. Looking at the body, the only thought in Kazuo's mind was, crumpling exploding ninja paper lessens its explosive power considerably. Chapter 9. Turning around, Kazuo quickly surveyed the situation around him before crouching down and taking the Cloud Ninja bag and quickly stealing anything he thought would be of use. 2 paper tag kunai and 3 paper explosion tags, as well as 2 more soldier pills, Kazuo thought as he quickly bagged his loot and then took the ninja's short sword before turning around and heading to the next enemy. The situation was grim, for the leaf shinobi had already been killed. However, the other side had similarly sustained injuries and deaths. In fact, 5 of their shinobi had been killed if Kazuo included the kid he had killed. Taking 2 explosion tags, Kazuo quickly turned them into crumpled balls as he had the previous time and held them in his left arm whilst he used his right dominant arm to hold the short sword before slowly and as sneakily as he could, he came closer to 2 cloud shinobi who were fighting a leaf ninja. It was clear from the battle that the leaf shinobi was stronger than each of the cloud ninjas. However, he couldn't deal with both of them at the same time. In the chaos of the battle, even Kazuo's sneaking abilities were enhanced just by the battlefield itself. Finally, the leaf shinobi seemed unable to hold on and was pushed back, one of his arms badly damaged by a lightning release jutsu. The 2 cloud ninjas didn't waste the opportunity and quickly jumped to the leaf shinobi so that they could finish the job. Kazuo had been waiting for this, however, and now he was close enough that he could finally act. Taking out 2 kunai that had an explosion tag placed on them, he flung them to the back of the 2 cloud ninjas before quickly throwing both of the crumpled ones right at the leaf shinobi. The cloud shinobi saw the 2 crumpled papers that quickly lit up, their expressions changing immediately as they took a back step. Bang! With a loud explosion sound, the papers exploded, completely incinerating the downed leaf shinobi. However, the cloud ninjas were still fine as they looked through the black cloud of smoke directly at Kazuo, who had thrown them. A sinister expression took over their faces as they smiled. You killed your own shinobi, tree hugger. I always knew you bastards would even betray your comrades, so much for that shitty will of fire, eh? The other cloud shinobi sneered as he looked at Kazuo. Yeah, who the fuck follows a shitty will, Kazuo said before making another rat seal. When the 2 cloud shinobi had backstepped, they had arrived right next to the 2 exploding kunai. Kai! The sneering expressions on the cloud ninjas' faces quickly changed to ones of horror as they stared at Kazuo. However, it was much too late. With an explosion much larger than the one from the crumpled tags, both of them were completely incinerated as their limbs flew into the air, completely detached from their bodies. Shit, this is stressful, Kazuo thought. not even taking a second look at the bodies and rather surveying the area once more. It seemed the battle had started to take a turn as the Leaf Shinobi used teamwork that surpassed the Cloud to turn the tides of battle. I already killed 3, what are you fuckers doing? Kazuo thought before quickly running toward another ninja. This time his target was another kid who looked like he hadn't even hit puberty yet. The kid was fighting another young Gennin from the Leaf. It seemed that they had coordinated the attack so that the Cloud young Gennin would fight the Leaf Gennin. Kazuo didn't plan anything this time as he quickly joined the battle, using the short sword he had gotten to swing at the Cloud ninja's nape. The Leaf Shinobi nodded at Kazuo before the two quickly joined forces and started teaming up on the kid from the Cloud. Just give up, you adopted son of a bitch, Kazuo said as he started swearing profanities at the Cloud ninja constantly. Sweat was dripping down his chin as he did so. Kazuo's body shook after each strike he deflected, however he didn't give up. Compared to that fucker, you're nothing. Taking out a few shuriken from his bag, Kazuo used his short sword and swung at the right side of the Cloud ninja, causing him to dodge left. However, just before he had sidestepped, Kazuo had already thrown the shuriken where he had predicted the ninja would move to. Shklick shklick shklick. All 3 shuriken landed right on the young ninja's face. One pierced his eye, the other went straight through his nose, and the last one into his mouth, spelling his doom. Thump! For down, Kazuo thought before turning around and looking at his next target. However, it was at this moment when the battlefield changed entirely. It happened so suddenly that Kazuo didn't know what was happening for a moment. Tens of 3-pronged kunai fell all over the battlefield, and in the very next instant, a yellow flash went all around the battlefield. 11 Cloud ninjas were decapitated the very next second. Kazuo simply stood as he watched the bodies fall to the ground. He hadn't even seen anything besides a yellow flash, and suddenly the battle was over. It was so abrupt that it caused Kazuo to drop his sword in surprise. Minato Namikaze. And then cheers erupted from every single ninja in the camp at the hero who had arrived on the battlefield. Just how strong are you? I guess seeing it in reality really is different, Kazuo thought before releasing a long sigh. I did all that work to kill 4 of them and you just evaporated 11 of them in a fraction of a second. I guess this is what a shinobi with a flea on sight order looks like. It took only a few seconds for the sounds of battle to completely stop around the camp and for silence to take over, only to be overtaken by the cheers of the Leaf Shinobi. Chapter 10. Sitting down on the ground, Kazuo took deep breaths as he felt the stress of the battle crash into him all at once. He hadn't noticed it while he was fighting, however after finding himself safe enough, Kazuo felt like a ton of bricks fell onto his head. Kazuo stood there for a few moments before a shinobi came and gave him a hand to help him get up. It was the shinobi that he had helped defeat a Cloud ninja. Taking his hand, Kazuo got back up onto his feet and gave the man a nod. I just wanted to say thank you for saving me back there, the Leaf Gennin said with a smile on his face. Kazuo shook his head. It's what every Leaf ninja would have done. Right, the Gennin said, his smile growing even brighter. As if you dumb fuck, if I didn't help you then I could die if the Cloud ninjas won the battle. I didn't know the yellow flash was coming, otherwise I would have stayed put and hidden instead of fighting. Kazuo thought inwardly as he sneered at the young shinobi. On the outside, however, Kazuo didn't show any of those emotions, keeping a soft smile on his face. Quickly enough the ninjas gathered and headed to the commander's tent to see what their next plan of action would be. As they walked through the camp, one could see tens upon tens of corpses, be they ninjas from the Cloud or their Leaf comrades. In the distance, Kazuo spotted 2 corpses that seemed to have been cut in half, their faces twisted in agony and tears dripping down their chins and onto the ground. It seemed they had died a miserable death. Yeso and Kenji, I guess it's to be expected considering how one is weak as hell while the other is a dumbass who rushes into combat. Kazuo thought as he stared at what once were his teammate and captain. Before he turned his head around and continued walking to the commander's tent. After a minute or so, Kazuo and the group arrived at the largest tent in the camp. It had been incinerated by the Cloud ninjas and what remained now was nothing but ashes. Thankfully the commander had survived the ambush and he now stood before the 100 or so survivors of the ambush. Next to him stood another man. He had bright yellow hair with a hidden leaf headband tied to his forehead, whilst he wore a Jonin jacket and blue pants that were tied up with white bandages at the knee. On his hip, 3 unique kunai were tied and a ninja bag was tied on the other side. It was the first time Kazuo had seen the man in real life, however he knew him better than most people in this world. In fact, he knew things about him that he himself didn't. Minato Namikaze, the yellow flash of the leaf and the future 4th Hokage. Father of the child of prophecy and the guy who becomes one of the strongest shinobi in history. Kazuo thought as he looked at the man who had a soft smile on his face. The shinobi around him stared at the man as some kind of idol, as some hero. However, Kazuo had a different perception of him. Dangerous, extremely so. His intellect is most definitely higher than mine. He might be on par with the Nara clan in that department. I need to be careful around him and everybody else for that matter. Hero to the leaf, but a genocidal maniac to everyone else, Kazuo thought before he naturally diverted his eyes from the man, hoping to not give the man even the slightest chance to notice him. Shikara Nara walked forward before he started to give his statement. I congratulate you, shinobi who have managed to survive this dire ordeal that befell upon us, Shikaru said first before taking a small break and continuing once more. We found out about this elaborate ambush only a few hours before it happened and thus couldn't plan thoroughly. However, all of us worked together and managed to get through it. We followed the will of fire as our ancestors did and managed to succeed in overthrowing those cloud scum, Shikaru said, causing the shinobi all around him to cheer as they laughed and swore at the cloud bastards who had dared to ambush their camp. Shikaru nodded before turning to Minato and giving him a light bow. We must also thank Namikaze Minato for his help in this battle. He was an essential part of our victory. And once more, cheers erupted in the crowd, before Shikaru quickly held his hand so that they would stop. However, there is another person who made it possible for us to survive this encounter. At his words, confusion quickly spread amongst the crowd. All of them were confused except one 12-year-old kid. Kazuo had a frown on his face which he quickly hid behind a poker face. I don't need the fame, goddammit. Keep me out of this, you bastard. It will just place a target on my back. Kazuo thought as his eyes sharpened, awaiting the next words of the commander. Thanks to Kazuo, a civilian-birth ninja who hasn't even been out of the academy for more than 2 months, we managed to find out about the incoming ambush and at least prepare enough to await for Minato's arrival, Shikaru said, looking directly at Kazuo. The shinobi turned and looked at where Shikaru had his sights on, finding the young Kazuo, and then they promptly cheered as they gave pats and words of thanks to the young ninja. I'll be taking him under my wing and helping him grow further, Shikaru said as a smile overtook his expression as he looked at Kazuo as if he was giving the ninja the opportunity of a lifetime. Everyone and even Minato smiled, happy for the young kid who had saved so many people. Kazuo meanwhile kept a large smile on his face. However, his thoughts differed from his outward look completely. This bastard just wants to keep me close so that he can monitor my actions better. And he's probably doubtful of the fact that I sense the ninjas, and if he decides to check that out then I'm most likely dead. Fuck. Chapter 11. The cheers soon stopped and Shikaru ordered every ninja to return and start rebuilding their tents, as well as started placing people on guard duty and patrols once more. There was no time to waste in war, as the enemy wouldn't let you entertain even the thought of a moment of rest. Kazuo returned to his own tent, which had thankfully survived the fire this time around by some stroke of luck. Entering inside, Kazuo took the water release scroll once more and started studying it. The terms used to explain how the jutsu worked were rather obscure and hard to understand. However, using the knowledge of his body and the process of elimination, Kazuo quickly derived what the words meant. Of course, he still had to test the jutsu out for real. However, he decided to wait until tomorrow, just in case anything else happened that would cause him to repeat the day. If any danger appeared again, then he needed to maintain his condition and chakra levels. Please let this shitty-ass day just pass, Kazuo thought as he released a long-winded sigh. Sitting down on his bed, Kazuo read the water bullet jutsu scroll over and over until he memorized it in its entirety and analyzed as much as he could. All that was left was to put the theory into practice and actually do the jutsu. As he rolled the scroll back and closed it, Kazuo got up and headed outside of his tent. Looking at the moon which had reached the top of the sky, he knew that it was only a matter of minutes before the day was over. And just as those thoughts passed through his mind, a bell-like notification sound rang in his head and a holographic panel appeared before him. Quickly getting back into the tent, Kazuo sat down before starting to read the text in front of him. Ding! User has completed a quest. User has completed a secret quest. Please check the quest menu to see the rewards. Reading the text quickly, Kazuo's eyes widened for a moment as his heartbeat increased. A secret quest? Kazuo thought before he quickly opened the quest menu of the system. Quests. Survive the day. Rewards, 1 C-rank elemental jutsu, claim. Hidden quest, eliminate 3 or more enemy ninjas. Reward, minor stat upgrade point, random D-rank jutsu scroll. Claim. Kazuo's expression quickly changed to one of joy at the rewards before he quickly hit the claim button. User has been granted a C-rank elemental jutsu. Please select. Fire style, Great Fireball Jutsu. Water style, Water Clone Jutsu. Earth style, Hiding like a Mole Jutsu. Wind style, Great Breakthrough. Lightning style, Lightning Ball Jutsu. Looking over the options, Kazuo quickly started analyzing each option and seeing what he could remember about them from the show. Fire style is useless, it's practically unusable in combat at least at C rank, it's quite easy to dodge and also attracts a lot of attention. Kazuo thought before moving on to the second option. Water clones are definitely up there in terms of usability, the question, however, is whether are they a massive increase compared to regular clones, though a combination of illusionary clones and water clones could be a pretty good strategy to catch the enemy off guard. The problem lies in my chakra reserves. At most I will be able to make 2 and that might even be stretching it. Kazuo thought before deciding to discard this option as well. Wind style is great, however it's not something I find particularly useful, the same goes for the lightning ball. I already have a C-rank jutsu for attack with a water bullet. This leaves the earth style hiding like a mole jutsu. Kazuo thought before he quickly analyzed all the benefits of the jutsu. Being able to escape enemies by going deep underground by softening the earth, and after I've passed through the earth changes back to its usual state, which makes it undetectable. One would have to either be a Hyuga or a great chakra sensor to be able to find me. It's one of the best jutsu for survival, compared to the others it's quite a bit better. Kazuo thought before releasing a sigh. The summoning jutsu would have been better, but out of these choices, this is most definitely the most useful one yet. Kazuo thought before quickly selecting the jutsu. User has selected Earth Style, Hiding like a Mole Jutsu. Processing. User has been granted the knowledge required to perform the jutsu. As that text appeared in front of him, Kazuo felt a minor pain in his mind as a bunch of information was transferred to him. User has been granted a random D-rank jutsu. Ding! User has gained Paper Shuriken Jutsu. Another flood of information occurred in Kazuo's mind as he was transferred all the information about the jutsu from the system. Releasing a sigh after a few moments when the pain finally disappeared, Kazuo opened his status screen. Stats. Name, Kazuo. Age, 12. Race, human. Strength, D. Endurance, D. Agility, D. Intelligence, B. Charisma, C. Chakra, D. Minor grade stat point, 1. Skills. Time loop, level 1. Academy Taijutsu, level 8 out of 10. Academy Shuriken Jutsu, level 9 out of 10. Clone Jutsu, level 5 out of 10. Substitution Jutsu, level 5/10. Transformation Jutsu, level 5/10. Hiding like a Mole Jutsu, level 10 out of 10. Paper Shuriken Jutsu, level 10/10. Reading the status panel before him, a smile appeared on Kazuo's face. When the system grants a jutsu it's already mastered? Kazuo thought as elation erupted inside of him, causing a wide smile to spread on his face. Looking at the status point that he had gained, Kazuo started thinking about his next decision. However, he didn't have to think hard to come to a decision. Currently, even if I increase my stats like strength or agility by a single grade, I won't really gain a significant boost in combat ability. The only stat that could give me that is Chakra, allowing me to use more of my Jutsu. In the last battle, I didn't even use any Jutsu for the simple fact that I would only have 3 uses at the most before running out, and so I had to save them, Kazuo thought before quickly using the status point. Chakra, D. Suddenly Kazuo felt a rush of energy from inside his body that quickly stabilized a few seconds later. Checking his chakra reserves, he quickly found that the increase had in fact been significant. He had gone from the lowest Gennin level chakra reserves to a medium-rank Gennin. It had effectively tripled his chakra. Just how low were my chakra reserves? Kazuo thought as he felt the urge to curse the past owner of this body. Chapter 12. Kazuo gathered his thoughts for a few moments before eventually deciding that it was best to get a good night's rest before waking up early tomorrow to try out his newly gained jutsu. Putting his head against what couldn't even be called a pillow, Kazuo once more damned this world and finally slept. As the moon fell down and just before the sun could shine its first rays, Kazuo woke up once more. As soon as he woke up, he headed to the training grounds. He had slept in his combat gear, not trusting the safety of the camp at all. Removing my combat gear like that dumbass did when I took over his body isn't a decision I'm going to make, Kazuo thought as he walked to the training area he had used yesterday. It seemed that he wasn't the only one who had woken up early to train, as there were already a few people doing taijutsu katas or practicing their shuriken jutsu. Kazuo walked to a more secluded area before taking out an explosion tag from his bag before he stopped himself. If I inject chakra into this thing, then it's most likely going to explode, isn't it? How do I bypass this so that I can make explosion tag shuriken? Kazuo thought before putting the tag back and deciding to use his other jutsu first. One hand sign, that was all it took before Kazuo felt the ground under him become softer and he fell underground. Because of the information and mastery he had gained of the jutsu from the system, he already knew how to navigate himself, and the jutsu's hand signs had been reduced to a minimum. Traveling under the earth for a couple of meters in front, Kazuo headed up and jumped out of the ground. It's great. The speed at which I'm able to use it also makes it so that I can apply it to combat immediately and don't have to train it until it becomes usable. Cheats really are the best, Kazuo thought before he started the next part of his training. He didn't have any regular paper on him at the moment, so the shuriken jutsu would have to wait. However, he still had another jutsu to practice. The water bullet jutsu. Forming the hand signs as quickly as he could, Kazuo followed the instructions given in the scroll as he felt his chakra gather at the back of his mouth. Manipulating this chakra was easy considering most of the work was done by the hand signs, and so all he had to do was gather enough chakra at the back of his mouth and use the hand signs to transform that clump of chakra into a water bullet. After a few moments, Kazuo felt like his mouth was about to burst, causing him to hurry up and perform the jutsu, trying to get the water bullet out of his mouth. He, however, was just a step too late. The water bullet exploded in his own mouth, completely exploding Kazuo's head and causing a rain of blood and brain matter to spread around him before his body fell down to the floor with a thumping sound. Huff huff. Waking up startled, Kazuo found himself waking up once more just as he had done less than an hour ago in his tent, just before the sun had risen up on the horizon. I died from fucking up a C-rank jutsu? Kazuo thought, baffled at himself. This time he hadn't even encountered an enemy and he had died, by his own hand at that. A shudder went through his body as he remembered the last sensations before his demise. Fuck, that wasn't fun, Kazuo thought before sighing and getting up from the bed once more. However, instead of rushing to the training grounds this time, he rummaged through his backpack before finding a small unused notebook which he took, and then he headed to the training ground. Once there, he headed back to his secluded spot before deciding it was finally time to practice that shuriken jutsu. Taking a piece of paper out of the notebook, Kazuo started using chakra to fold the paper. The process was much faster than if he was going to do it with his hands. It felt like an instinctual move that he had been able to do all of his life. In a second, Kazuo had a sharp paper shuriken in his hand. Grabbing the shuriken, he threw it at a wooden log in front of him. The paper shuriken pierced deeply into the wood, though it didn't come out on the other side. It's much sharper than even metal shuriken. It's most likely because of the chakra that is enhancing the paper's properties. This just was an original created by Conan. she also covered them in oil so that they would be destroyed by water, eliminating the jutsu's main weakness. Kazuo thought before sitting down and starting to analyze the information he had gained from the jutsu. If I analyze the actual process instead of using the move instinctually, then I'll be able to understand the concept behind paper jutsu, basically granting me a Kekei Genkai of sorts. Kazuo thought, however, as he delved into the information he had gained, he quickly found out a problem. My chakra control is way too low to do any of this. The only reason I'm even able to perform the shuriken is most likely because the system helped me do it by instinct. Kazuo thought before releasing a sigh and adding another objective to his list of what he had to train. Getting up from the ground, Kazuo performed the hand seals for the water bullet jutsu once more, trying to manage the chakra as carefully as he could this time. Bringing it to the back of his mouth and letting the hand signs guide his chakra to perform a nature change and turn it into water release chakra. This time he progressed further into the process, however. Bang! Another shower of brain matter occurred a second later. Chapter 13, Waking up once more, Kazuo felt like smashing everything around him. Taking deep, slow breaths, Kazuo quickly calmed his emotions down. Chakra control training is on top of the list. Those bastards at the core didn't even teach us water walking, and even the tree walking is scuffed at best. Kazuo thought before getting up from the bed and heading to the training ground once more, deciding that today and every day after would be dedicated to chakra control training until he managed to at least have decent water walking down. Back at the training ground again, Kazuo quickly found a tree at the very edge of the area and started using tree walking. His footing could barely be called stable as he walked up and down the tree. One small push would likely mess it up and cause him to fall down to the ground. Kazuo spent 3 hours just walking on the tree before he heard a bell-like notification. Ding! User has gained tree walking skill. Tree walking, 5 out of 10. It didn't change much even after he gained it. His mastery remained the same as before the system gave him the notification. Gaining a skill through hard work doesn't boost what you are trying to do and simply shows your current level of mastery. Maybe in the future a quest could give me a skill upgrade skill point, but even then it would be much more useful to try and use it on time looping than any other skill, Kazuo thought before shaking his head and continuing his training. He continued for 2 more hours before he ran out of chakra and had to lay down on the grass to rest. The idea of killing himself passed through Kazuo's mind, however he quickly removed it from his mind. Dying was fun. In fact, it was horrifying, and Kazuo didn't want to put himself through that willingly. He had already died twice today because of his own mistakes. As he rested on a patch of grass under the tree he had been training on, he saw a shinobi come toward him. "Kazuo, the commander has called for you," he said before turning around and heading away. "That damn Shikaru, can't he just leave me alone?" Kazuo thought as he got up from the ground and started walking toward the commander's tent. If I were him, then I would have monitored myself as well. The village most likely has files on all of their shinobi about their abilities, and chakra sense is most definitely not on mine, which would cause any commander with a decent head on their shoulders to become wary. However, he has decided not to eliminate me and instead use me as a way to motivate the camp and raise their morale while also having a good excuse to monitor me almost constantly. Thoughts whirred inside Kazuo's head as he analyzed the situation he had found himself in. Sigh. Releasing another sigh, Kazuo thought. I'm really going to get gray hair at 12 years old, aren't I? A few minutes later, Kazuo appeared before the commander's tent, seeing the same guard as before. The commander called for me, Kazuo said, and the guard didn't stop him this time. In fact, Kazuo could see it in the ninja's behavior. He was now respected by him. I killed a fellow leaf ninja, but none of you saw it. I wonder what your expression would be then. Kazuo thought to himself jokingly before he entered the commander's tent. Once inside, he saw that it had been completely restored and looked almost exactly the same as before it had been incinerated to the ground. There was a new addition, however. That addition was the presence of another man standing next to the commander. Minato Namikaze, what's he still doing around here? Kazuo thought before moving his gaze away naturally and looking at the commander. You called, Commander? Shikaru stood silent for but a moment before nodding his head. That's right, as I said before, I'll be taking you under my wing, so I want you to be next to me and observe everything I do from now on and try to learn as much as you can, Shikara said before pointing to a chair that had been placed a few meters away from him. I see, that would be an honor, sir, Kazuo said, giving a 90-degree bow to the man and holding it until Shikara told him to straighten up. Now Kazuo finally turned completely toward Minato, clearly showing his curiosity to the two shinobi. Minato, seeing this, gave Kazuo a warm smile and a wave. Hey! I'm Minato Namikaze, nice to meet you, Minato said before walking to Kazuo and offering a handshake. Kazuo looked at his hand for a split second before taking it and twisting his expression. The look on his face changed to that of admiration, almost as if his eyes were shining as he looked at Minato, as though the man was some kind of god to him. Kazuo, sir, I've wanted to meet you for so long, you're my idol, Kazuo said as he shook Minato's hand, quickly causing Minato's smile to twitch. Scratching the back of his head, Minato gave a short laugh, clearly embarrassed by the high praise. Meanwhile, Kazuo wanted to kill himself. I have to be a fangirl. Building a good relationship with him is necessary, even if it's not going to happen right away. I need to leave a good impression. I'm just an innocent, cute little junior who idolizes him. Aw fuck, I want to kill myself, Kazuo thought as he maintained his expression of idolization. Shikara looked at the two for a moment before returning his gaze to the papers on his desk. Parting their handshake, Minato's smile finally returned to normal before he turned to face Shikara. I'll be heading off to different battlefields now. I wish you the best of luck, Shikara-san, Minato said, causing Shikara to lift his head and nod at Minato. Turning around once more, Minato took something out of his backpack and offered it to Kazuo. It was a 3-pronged kunai. Chapter 14. Taking the kunai in his hands, Kazuo felt his heartbeat race. Ah, thank God my efforts paid off, Kazuo thought as he gave a 90-degree bow to Minato. Thank you so much, sir. I'll treasure it with my life, Kazuo said before straightening himself up. Minato looked at him for a moment before patting his shoulder. If you're ever in danger of losing your life, just throw this kunai and send some chakra to the handle, and I'll try my best to come as fast as possible and save you, Minato said with a smile before leaving the tent. As he went, Kazuo's thoughts immediately took a turn. The last words Minato had said to him. Why the hell would he offer something like that to me? Suspicious as fuck, Kazuo thought before taking the 3-pronged kunai and tying it to his ninja bag. Turning toward the commander, Kazuo nodded before walking to his chair and sitting down. Hours passed with Shikara doing nothing besides completing papers and looking at a map. In the afternoon, 6 shinobi came inside the tent. Just from the air around them alone, Kazuo could guess that they were in a high position, most likely the captains of the different shinobi divisions. Come here, I'll be explaining our attack plan for tomorrow, Shikara said as he pointed at a map, causing all 6 shinobi to nod and head closer. Kazuo curiously stood up as well and went ahead to stand next to the commander. If I'm being used by you, then it's only right that I do the same, isn't it? Kazuo thought as he took his position. By standing next to the commander, he was increasing his already good standing in the camp after the last battle even higher, though the danger would of course increase in proportion as well. If before Kazuo hadn't have been a target for the Cloud Ninjas, then now he would most likely be. After all, he had been turned into a hero of the camp, someone who brought the camp's morale up. Shikara gave him a glance before returning his sight to the map, the edges of his lips slightly raised. We are here, as you all know, the commander said as he pointed at a small clearing in the map. It was surrounded by forest, and further northeast stood a mountain range with a small clearing in the middle that allowed passage. On the other side of the clearing, Kazuo could see what was marked as the Cloud Ninja's base. Tomorrow will be a full-blown war right in the middle of this passage from what I could predict, and so 90% of the camp combat forces will be going over there to fight. What I want is for one squadron to team up with the Umbu and set up explosives on the other side of this canyon-like passage, Shikara said as he pointed at the entrance of the passage from the side of the cloud. If we manage to do this and detonate them successfully, then I predict a loss of about 30% of the Cloud Ninja forces, Shikara said before pointing at a location next to the passage. That, however, will only be the start. The entire force will be hidden here at this spot and will wait for the explosions. As soon as the cloud ninjas retreat back, then we will attack. However, that is not all. I will send our best Umbu squad to directly attack their camp and eradicate any medical ninja they do have, lowering their chances of survival even further," Shikaru said as a smile overtook his expression. Crazy bastard, Kazuo thought before a smile took over his expression as well, matching Shikaru's. "I like it. Actually, can I use this to increase my standing even further?" Kazuo thought for a moment as a plan started forming in my head. "On the first turn, I'll see how the tides turn. If we win the battle overwhelmingly, then I can simply let it pass. However, if we take any damages because of miscalculations, then I could simply kill myself and make it seem as if I thought of the possibility that the specific danger could exist, thus increasing my standing in the camp if what I said was correct. I don't need to be as smart as you, Shikaru. I'll simply smash my way through to victory, no matter how many turns it takes." Kazuo thought inwardly. However, despite his joy, he didn't change how he acted outwardly, appearing as though he was a calm lake, simply there to observe and to learn from his commander. "All right, Shikaru, we'll follow your orders. You have never failed us after all," a man with white eyes and long black hair wearing a black headband that he had tied to his forehead said. Kazuo turned to face the man, quickly identifying him. A Hyuga of the branch family, most likely, since he is covering his forehead. Next, a boisterous laugh erupted from the next captain. It was a woman with short, spiky brown hair and 2 red fangs painted on her cheeks. Her irises and pupils were thin, almost looking like a cat instead of those a human would have. Inazuka. The other 4 shinobi nodded their heads. They didn't have any discernible traits that Kazuo could match with the famous clans of the Hidden Leaf Village. They're either civilian birth ninja or they're from some small unknown clan, Kazuo thought, turning his head to face Shikaru once more, who nodded at the captains and dismissed them. Shikaru turned to Kazuo and motioned with his hand, clearly dismissing him as well. "There's nothing else to learn today, you can go back." Kazuo nodded his head politely and turned around, leaving the commander's tent and heading straight to the training grounds once more. He had to increase his level of tree walking, and quickly at that. It would be very useful in a place like a canyon, and not being able to have full precision and mastery over it in such a place would be a massive decrease in potential combat power. Chapter 15. Heading back outside, Kazuo walked directly to the training grounds once more. As he had sat still whilst in the commander's tent and hadn't done anything, his chakra had already recovered and he was ready for another training session for his tree walking. "I'll try to get it to level 6 by the end of today and then give the water bullet jutsu another try. I'm very close to being able to actually use the jutsu. I just need to try it a few more times. This way, even if I die, which hopefully isn't the case, then I could get another day of training to bring tree walking to level 7, and at that point, my chakra control should be good enough that I can do the water bullet jutsu," Kazuo thought to himself as he arrived at the secluded area once more and started his training of running and jumping around on the trees. He had even increased the level to standing simply on one leg so that it would be harder and require more chakra control. Hours passed and midnight was fast approaching. Thankfully, Kazuo hadn't been bothered by anyone today. Being under Shikaru's wing seemed to actually give a pretty great boon in the fact that he didn't have to go out on patrol missions or on guard duty. Checking his status menu one last time, Kazuo saw what he had tried so hard to achieve throughout the entire day. Tree walking, 6 out of 10. Seeing the increased level confirmed the fact that he had indeed improved by doing his training. It was extremely rewarding to actually see the fruits of your labor, and Kazuo considered it a major benefit of the system. Even though it didn't increase his capabilities and only showed him what his skill level was, it also gave him a way to motivate himself and push through whilst others treaded in the dark, not exactly knowing if they had improved or now. Time to test that water bullet jutsu once again. This time I'm more familiar with it, considering I almost managed it before dying twice before, and my chakra control should be better. Thought not by a large degree, it should still have an effect on the outcome, Kazuo thought before taking a deep breath and releasing it slowly. Looking at the tree stump before him which he had picked as his target, Kazuo's eyes sharpened before he started making hand signs quickly. Tiger, ox, tiger, rat. Kazuo quickly finished the combination, transforming the chakra that he had gathered at the back of his mouth and changing it into water release. Then a split second later, Kazuo opened his mouth and a water ball or bullet shot straight out of his mouth at high speeds, directly to the tree trunk he had aimed at. Bang! The water bullet exploded as it hit the tree trunk, the sound of splashing water and cracking wood interjecting with each other. A second later, Kazuo walked to his target and looked at the damage he had managed to do. The entire tree trunk had been cracked and split apart with a large ball-shaped hole at the point of impact. If a human is hit by that, then that's definitely causing quite a bit of damage, if not straight-up death, Kazuo thought with a large smile before he heard a bell-like notification sound in his head. Ding! User has learned Water Style, Water Enhanced Bullet Jutsu. Skills: Water Style, Enhanced Water Bullet, 4 out of 10. Confusion quickly found its way into Kazuo's mind as he stared at the new jutsu he had earned. Enhanced Water Bullet? When did I do that? Kazuo thought before he started thinking back to the entire process of learning the jutsu. The only thing that could have caused this is me not inferring correctly what some of the words in the jutsu scroll meant, Kazuo thought before he quickly went back to his tent to look at the scroll once more. He wasn't planning on doing any more training for the day either way. Once inside his tent, Kazuo quickly sat on his bed and took the scroll in his hands, reading it over again. When he arrived at the kanji words that he didn't know the exact meaning of, Kazuo decided on a plan of action. I'll write these down and go ask other people to see if they know the correct meaning, Kazuo thought before nodding his head and taking the notebook that he had with him and starting to copy the kanji down onto a page. Once done, Kazuo placed the notebook down and headed to sleep. He needed to be in his best condition for tomorrow, otherwise death would be a highly likely possibility. And so after a few minutes Kazuo managed to lull himself to sleep, doing so until the beginning hours of the morning and waking up just before the first rays of the morning sun hit the ground, just like he had yesterday. Getting up, Kazuo started performing some stretches in the morning which he remembered from the past memories of his current body. They were taught in the Ninja Academy and were something most, if not all, the Leaf Shinobi used so that they could warm their bodies up and make them ready for combat. After about 20 minutes, Kazuo was done and headed outside. His first task of the day was to see what the kanji he hadn't understood had actually meant. When I get back to Konoha, I'll need to buy books about this. Kanji are super important in this world as they are used for sealing jutsu, Oswell, Kazuo thought before turning his head left and right and spotting a shinobi a few meters away from him. Walking up to the man, Kazuo quickly asked for his help. Of course, if I can then I'll help you out, the shinobi said. His eyes were practically shining as he looked at Kazuo, who had turned into an overnight celebrity inside the camp. Right, could you tell me about this kanji and its meaning? Kazuo said, nodding his head before showing the page in the notebook. The ninja made a thinking face for a moment before answering. I think that's the kanji for stomach? That's just the most common meaning, however, and it could have other more obscure meanings, Oswell, the shinobi answered, causing Kazuo to give him a nod and a small thanks before heading away. I was supposed to need the chakra in my damn stomach, not in my mouth, god damned it. Chapter 16, Releasing Another Sigh. Kazuo felt like it had already become a habit of his with how things seemed to be going in this world for him. Walking to the commander's tent, Kazuo gave a nod to the guard who returned it before he entered inside. Shikaru was already awake and looking at the map. The plan was for everyone to be awake before the hour was up and to start marching toward the pass. Good morning, Commander, Kazuo said as he gave the man a light bow before coming to stand at his side. Shikaru merely nodded, his full concentration on the map. Is there anything wrong, sir? Kazuo asked the man curiously. The main problem would be if the cloud sends less than 50% of their forces to the pass, which would allow them to isolate us who were lying in ambush from both sides. That could spell doom for us, Shikaru said as he pointed to the location where the battle was going to take place. Kazuo nodded his head whilst making a humming voice. I don't think they will do that unless we have a spy amongst us, Kazuo said, causing Shikaru to give him a glance. I'm not a fucking spy, you bastard, Kazuo thought. However, he didn't show a change in his outward expression. And why is that? Shikaru asked as a small smile crept on his face. It's because it would be too risky. If we went with a full frontal attack, then the first group of cloud ninjas would be completely annihilated, and thus they would subsequently lose the second battle as well, ending the entire conflict with a total annihilation of the cloud forces, Kazuo said as he took what was a stick and pointed at locations on the map as he explained his reasoning. You're not dull. That's the case, however you have to always plan for spies when in times of war. That is the main reason why we planted the explosives, so that we could reduce that small force even further into a small enough force that they would be annihilated in short notice, Shikaru said before turning around and heading to another area of the tent and grabbing what looked like his combat gear. Kazuo looked at him surprised. You're going to participate in the battle as well? Isn't that illogical? If we lose our commander, then the troops won't know who to follow and will thus suffer a massive morale drop. Kazuo asked Shikaru. He was genuinely curious about what the genius Nara clan member was thinking. That's true, however we need to win this battle. The Leaf is currently fighting on all sides and thus we have much fewer forces to work with. The only reason we are able to remain as the victors is because our high-end power is greater than the other villages, Shikaru said as he outfitted himself and fastened a ninja bag to his waist. If that's the case, then I guess it makes sense. Having you participate in the battle will give the troops a morale boost and allow them to follow your orders more closely in the case of an accident. As long as you don't fall in battle, then it's actually an advantage, Kazuo mumbled before nodding his head at Shikaru. I don't know if I would go to the battlefield if I was in your spot. At the end of the day, the question turns into whether it would be more favorable for me to save my life or to win this battle at any cost, Kazuo thought as he stood to the side, patiently awaiting Shikaru's orders. Go outside and tell the guard to inform the captains of all squads to get ready. We will start the attack in half an hour. Half an hour? When he clearly told everyone yesterday that it would be an hour from now, he's trying to turn any information that could have possibly been leaked into something useless for the enemy? Kazuo thought before nodding his head and going outside to inform the shinobi guard, who quickly nodded and headed off. Kazuo was already ready, though he didn't really have much in terms of supplies that he could get ready and that would be useful when the battle began. I've already made 3 crumpled explosion tags and 15 paper shuriken. I don't have anything else to prepare, and gathering more supplies from the camp is hard considering the low supply they have. As a Gennin, my rank in getting supplies is at the bottom of the barrel. At most I would be given normal kunai and shuriken. Kazuo thought as he stood inside the commander's tent awaiting Shikaru. Moments later the Nara commander gave him a nod and together they headed out. The whole shinobi squadrons were already waiting for them, armed to the teeth. It's time for another battle, huh? Kazuo thought as he stared at the hundreds of Leaf shinobi standing before him. They all had steeled expressions, ready to go into what could be the final battle of their lives. War is unforgiving to the weak, Kazuo thought, clenching his hand. His thoughts were more so meant for himself rather than the shinobi in front of him. Chapter 17. Shikaru went to the front and quickly gave his orders, and in a matter of seconds, the entire shinobi army started running outside of the camp and toward the passage through the mountains. Kazuo had seen that it was labeled as the Kyatsu Pass on the map. Other teams had already gone there before them in secret and planted the explosives, and the Umbu were already hidden around the area so that they could jump out and plow their way to the main camp of the Cloud in the event that the plan worked perfectly. However, Kazuo was doubtful. The chances of there being a spy or just some uncontrollable variable that we can't do anything or don't know about is just too high in a foreign country, Kazuo thought as he ran next to Shikaru. The two were in the middle of the group, surrounded on all sides by shinobi. It was the safest spot in the entire march, considering the enemy would have to face other shinobi first before getting to them no matter what side they chose for an ambush. The run took about 1 hour. They took no breaks, and Kazuo clearly felt his inferiority in physical ability when he looked at the other shinobi. However, he couldn't stop running, and so he pushed through, though his lungs felt like they were on fire and he was completely drenched in sweat from the high-speed run. Finally, at the Kiyotaka Pass, the shinobi army quickly passed onto the other side. Everything seems to be going to plan for now, Kazuo thought as the whole 100 shinobi quickly arrived at the place where they would be hiding and waiting for the signal. The signal in this case was the explosion of the entrance to the pass. It would make a loud enough sound that they would be able to hear it clearly. Minutes passed, and the stress of the shinobi of the Leaf started rising quickly alongside it. Some had even started to pray before the battle, in hopes that God would save them during the upcoming battle. God is just a damn alien who's obsessed with his kids. He won't do jack, Kazuo thought as he looked at the praying shinobi before releasing a huff of breath. At this moment, as the whole army stood in absolute silence, they heard it, a deafening explosion before a large cloud of black smoke quickly rose up into the air. Everyone, head forward into battle, eliminate any enemies that you see. Shikaru commanded with a loud voice, likely enhanced by his chakra so that everyone could hear him clearly. At his words, the shinboi quickly launched themselves onto the tree branches and started hopping from tree to tree, quickly closing in on the enemy location. It merely took them a minute to arrive. In front of them were the decimated forces of the cloud, however strangely their numbers seemed low. Too low. That bastard actually predicted it, Kazuo thought as a smile overtook his expression. Quickly eliminate all of them, don't leave a single one of those bastards alive. Shikaru's voice was once more heard before the leaf ninjas released loud battle cries and launched themselves directly into the face of the remaining ninjas. The cloud shinobi, looking at the large number of enemies, sported lifeless expressions. Being abandoned by your own village and used as nothing more than a distraction, they are almost likely just Gennin, Kazuo thought with a sneer as he followed the shinobi and entered the fray himself. All around him clashes of swords and the sound of lighting erupted. The two forces had finally clashed with one another. Looking around quickly, Kazuo found his first target. It was a young cloud ninja who was being teamed up against by two leaf shinobi. Forming one hand sign, Kazuo used his new technique. Earth style, hiding like a mole technique, Kazuo thought inwardly, burrowing himself underground quickly before he started to move toward where the cloud ninja had been. His movement underground was quick, possibly even quicker than above it, though he hadn't tested it out yet. Arriving just behind the cloud ninja, Kazuo peeked his head above ground and saw that he was at the right spot. Extending his arms above ground, Kazuo caught the enemy by the foot. Surprise colored the cloud ninja's face as he looked down and saw Kazuo giving him a grin. "See ya," Kazuo said before he dragged his legs down and left him with only his upper body above ground. The leaf ninjas didn't waste the opportunity and quickly reaped his life by launching dozens of kunai into his skull. Moving a bit sideways, Kazuo headed back above ground. I have no idea why this jutsu and the decapitating just are even differentiated. You can do the same things just using this. Kazuo wondered for a split second before looking around to see if there were any enemies around him. There were none. The cloud ninjas were all fighting for their lives with others, and even then, the majority of their forces had already been incapacitated or killed. Crouching down, Kazuo quickly grabbed the cloud ninja's bag and tied it to his own waist before heading to another corpse. He only stopped when he had 5 ninja bags tied to his waist. Any more and they would lower his ability to move and slow him down. They do say that war is the best time to earn money, Kazuo thought to himself before looking around once more. There were no cloud ninjas left. The battle was over. But the war wasn't, as Kazuo looked to the north. There, hundreds of meters away, a huge army close to theirs in numbers wall running towards them. Couldn't they just give up? Kazuo thought, though he knew that this desire of his was but a pipe dream. Taking out a kunai from his bag, Kazuo formed the academy stance, awaiting the enemy shinobi. This was going to be the real battle. Chapter 18. This is going to be quite a bit more bloodier than what just transpired, Kazuo thought as sweat formed on his forehead. The clash between the two large shinobi armies was imminent. Just how strong was Madara if he faced a force more than 100 times this size whilst still not even fully revived, Kazuo thought to himself. Asterisk bang. Asterisk asterisk clang asterisk. The blades, the fire, and the lighting jutsus all clashed with each other as unprecedented chaos quickly ensued. Cries of fear and pain quickly resounded as shinobis from both sides started killing each other. Kazuo stood still for a moment, carefully surveying the battle. Heading into battle directly right now is dangerous. Even if I kill one of them, then 2 or 3 will take their spot, Kazuo thought, his hands slightly shaking. At that moment he saw a cloud ninja heading directly toward him. It was a young ninja much like Kazuo himself. Why do kids always want to die by my hand, Kazuo thought before a large smile erupted on his face. Who was he to complain when a small fish came right into his mouth? The cloud ninja quickly started weaving hand signs before his chest expanded and he launched a lightning bolt out of his mouth. Its speed was impressive as it headed directly to Kazuo's location, only for it to pass right through him. A clone? The cloud ninja mumbled, quickly looking around, left and right trying to locate his enemy. At that moment, he felt something grab his feet before pulling half of his body underground. It was Kazuo, who had deployed a clone as soon as the clash had happened and headed underground. TCH releasing a frustrated sound, the Cloud Ninja tried to get out as quickly as he could, however he was too late. Kazuo didn't head above ground immediately to finish the ninja, he simply placed a ceiling tag on his back before getting away from him instantly. That had been the right choice, it seemed, as the young Cloud Ninja quickly deployed electricity all around him, freeing himself from the earth-released Jutsu. At that moment, Kazuo headed back above ground. "I'll kill you," the Cloud Shinobi said. Hatred seemed to be dripping out of his eyes as he looked at Kazuo. "Right, maybe next time," Kazuo said before forming the rat seal. The Cloud Kid's eyes widened as he saw the hand seal, dread engulfing his mind. "Just kidding, you actually fell for it?" Kazuo said to him before laughing out loud. Veins erupted on the Cloud Ninja's forehead as he screamed at Kazuo loudly before starting to rush at him. "You bastard." Kazuo simply smiled, still holding the rat seal. "Actually, I wasn't lying, Kai." Boom. With a loud explosion, the Cloud Ninja exploded into blood and organ matter that dripped all over the ground. Turning his head, Kazuo surveyed the battlefield, however he didn't have to wait long, in fact it was almost instant when another Cloud Ninja came to him. This time it wasn't a child but rather a large brown-skinned man who sported a very muscular build with brown hair that made his head similar to a pineapple. Kazuo's eyes immediately sharpened before he made hand seals quickly. For illusionary clones appear all around him. "Those won't work against me, kid. I'll make you pay for what you did to Hikari," the man said before he disappeared from Kazuo's sight. It was instant, almost as if the man had teleported, and in the very next instant Kazuo saw the man merely inches from him. "Die, Konoha scum," the man said before he punched Kazuo in the stomach. What was strange to Kazuo, however, was that he wasn't thrown back from the punch. He quickly found the reason, however. Looking down at his abdomen, Kazuo saw what the man had done to him. "He pierced through my abdomen completely with his punch. Who is this bastard?" Kazuo thought as he looked at the man. The pain coursing through Kazuo's mind was extreme. It was mind-warping, however Kazuo didn't lose his mind even for a split second as he stared at the man who had practically killed him. Cough. Blood spewed from Kazuo's mouth. "What's your name?" "Okioke, a Jonin of the Proud Cloud. Remember my name well even in hell," the man said, giving Kazuo a bloodthirsty smile. "How about you join me in there?" Kazuo said slowly, clearly feeling his life draining away from his body. At that moment Kazuo's backpack lit up and a sizzling sound was heard. "Kai," Kazuo said with a smile, however just as the explosions were about to go off, he saw the man disappear just like before and reappear tens of meters away, his face sneering at Kazuo. "Aw fuck." Boom. With a large explosion, Kazuo's body disintegrated. Huff huff. It was once more the morning, just before the sun had risen up in the sky. Kazuo was back in the camp. "Aw that fucker, quiet. Okioke? Whatever the hell his name was, why is a final level boss going after me, damned it," Kazuo said, his frustration clearly slipping into his voice. Taking a deep breath, Kazuo calmed himself back down. Don't get emotional, simply improve and move forward, Kazuo thought. It was at this moment as he was thinking that he heard a bell-like sound go off in his head. Ding! A system notification? Kazuo quickly thought as he stared at the system interface that had appeared in front of him abruptly. A quest has been generated. Quests. Kill Okioke, Jonin of the Hidden Cloud. Reward, 2 minor stat upgrades, 1 B-rank random jutsu. Reading the new quest that he had been given, Kazuo's felt like he had been slapped in the face. Shitty system, aren't you asking too much, goddammit? Kazuo thought, his emotions being triggered once more just a moment after he had managed to calm himself down. Chapter 19. Stopping for a moment to calm his emotions down once more, Kazuo started thinking as he stared at the new quest. I can just not do it, however. I want the rewards. they would increase my chances of passing a large hurdle down the line by quite a lot, considering that each jutsu gained by the system is already mastered, and with the 2 small stat upgrades I could get my chakra to Chunin level, which would increase my overall power by leaps and bounds. Kazuo thought as he quickly analyzed the situation he had fallen in. How do you kill someone that's that damn fast though? Kazuo thought to himself before his eyes lit up a moment later. That kid was someone important. I could use him, Kazuo thought before getting up from his bed and geared up before heading to the commander's tent. Following everything he had done in the previous loop, Kazuo found himself back in the middle of the battlefield with a kid charging toward him with the intent to kill. Just like last time, Kazuo dragged half his body underground before, however the difference was that Kazuo used every single explosion tag he had on the kid and stuck them to him in places neither he nor Okioke would be able to see. Kazuo had even taken the explosion tags that were tied to kunai and used them. Finishing the job quickly, Kazuo headed back above ground before taking the short sword he had gained from killing the Cloud Ninja back at the Leaf Camp and severing the young kid's arm from his shoulders. Arf! The Cloud Ninja released a loud scream as tears dropped from his eyes at the immense pain of having his arm cut. This is nothing, you crybaby bastard, Kazuo thought, remembering his unfortunate turns for but a split second before he quickly jumped backward. In the next instant, Okioke appeared next to the small kid. Are you alright, Hikari? It's okay, we will bandage the wound and you won't die, Okioke said as he quickly ripped a part of the bandages that he had tied to his arm and offered them to Hikari. Kazuo didn't stand still and simply watched them as he knew that after they were done, Okioke would come and kill him instantly, and so he started the second part of his plan. Taking out 2 crumpled explosion tags, Kazuo screamed at the Cloud duo before throwing them. Die, you Cloud scum, Kazuo said before making the rat seal and starting to activate the explosion tags. The problem with the ambush I had planned was that the tags make a sizzling sound just before exploding, and thus to remove that weakness I'll throw other tags at them to make them think that those are the only explosion tags. Kazuo thought, and his plan worked. Perfectly at that, Okioke took Hikaru in his arms and jumped away at that moment as they were running from the crumpled tags that didn't hold much power. It happened. A large explosion was heard all over the battlefield, causing quite a couple of shinobi to turn their heads. Boom! Ding! User has completed a quest. Kazuo had a large bloodthirsty smile on his face as he saw the 2 charred bodies drop to the floor. And then Kazuo turned to the Cloud shinobi before shouting in a loud voice. Is that all, you Cloud scum? I, a mere Gennin of the Leaf, just killed your Jonin. Just go to hell, you weak fuckers. Kazuo's words reverberated even in the chaos that was on the battlefield, being heard clearly by each shinobi. For a moment there was no response before the entire Cloud Ninja's face turned to ones of rage as they shouted curses and profanity of all kinds toward Kazuo. Meanwhile, the Leaf Ninja felt invigorated. They felt like their spirits were about to burst. Kill these weak bastards, Kazuo said once more with the same loud voice, almost as if he were the very commander of the battlefield. A moment after, loud cheers and battle cries were released out of the Leaf Shinobi's mouths as they increased their assault on the Cloud Ninjas, putting them on the back foot. The situation looked grim for them. A moment later, Kazuo, who had shouted, saw 3 Cloud Ninjas heading toward him, venom clearly seen in their eyes. Ah, sorry, but I don't want to fight, maybe another time? Kazuo said with a smile before forming a single hand sign and heading underground before running to the back of the Leaf side of the battlefield and resurfacing once more above ground. Looking around, Kazuo saw that Hikaru was back here as well, giving constant commands to the shinobi. Turning his head to Kazuo, the man gave a nod before simply saying 2 words. Good job. And then he turned around once again. The fight continued on, though the danger that Kazuo faced had lowered substantially, and in the next minute or so, it became practically zero. 3 teams of Konoha Umbu joined the fray. They had already completed their mission as the Hawk came to Hikaru to give his report. We have eradicated everyone inside the Cloud Camp. These are the last shinobi remaining, sir, Hawk said as he kneeled on one knee before the commander. Good job, join the battle, and let's end this quickly and return back to camp, Hikaru said as a smile overtook his expression at the good news. An overwhelming victory, Kazuo thought as he looked at the battlefield after hearing Hawk's words. Isn't the Leaf Village just too busted, damn it? They have the Uchiha, Senju, Hyuga, and Nara. Isn't that just too much? Just what was the author of Naruto's smoking Kazuo thought, however his smile only grew larger and larger. Ah, I have to milk them for as much as they are worth, everything they have. I won't even leave crumbs behind, so don't disappoint me, Konoha, Kazuo thought. Chapter 20. The rest of the battle didn't take longer than 3 minutes. With the Umbu, which were all at least elite Chunin level in power, the Cloud really had no way of winning. Their morale had already dropped down, and so had their numbers, and in 3 minutes, none remained alive. A complete and utter annihilation. And these are the men that are considered the good guys, the heroes. Don't make me laugh, a killer is a killer, there's no good in one, Kazuo thought as he sneered inwardly at the scene before him. Kazuo had always been an avid reader and fan of the Naruto series, however he had much preferred the light novels when in comparison with the manga and especially the anime. The process after defeating the group was swift. The Leaf quickly headed to the Cloud main camp and looted everything inside, whilst Chikara took any valuable information that could be taken before the whole group turned around and headed back to the Leaf main camp. This time it would be more tiring and chakra intensive, as they all had to climb up the steep mountain to get through to the other side, as they had collapsed the passage. However, with everyone's morale high and joy seeping through their bodies, the journey was considered light and not tiresome at all. They knew that with them having defeated the entire Cloud, most of them would get a vacation to go back to the Leaf for a week and maybe even 2 weeks if they were lucky. I don't think that bastard Shikaru will just let me get out of his grasp, however, Kazuo thought as he looked at Shikaru, who was walking in front of him. Should I just eliminate him and make it look like an Umbu from the Cloud did it? Kazuo thought for but a moment before showing a self-loathing smile. As if I can even touch him, I would die before I could even see his face with all the Umbu around to protect him. Kazuo thought. The journey took a while, but before night had fallen upon the world, they returned to the camp once more, sharing the great news with the other ninjas who had been left behind to protect the camp. That didn't mean that there was no sadness, however, as a lot of people had lost their comrades and would most likely shed tears tonight when they were alone in their tents. War was never joyful for the weak, it was only a repeating cycle of pain and sadness that fueled hatred. Kazuo quickly excused himself from the others and headed back to his tent. He had something else to deal with. Once inside his tent, Kazuo quickly opened the system menu and clicked on the Quests tab. Quests. Kill Okioke, Jonin of the Hidden Cloud. Reward, 2 minor stat upgrades, 1 B-rank random jutsu. Claim. Quickly pressing the claim button at the bottom of the holographic page, Kazuo saw a new pop-up appear before his eyes. Quest reward has been claimed. Rewards are being given out. 1%. 56%. 98%. 100%. User has been given the B-rank jutsu. Summoning, lightning flash blade creation. What the hell is that? Kazuo thought before a flood of information was transferred directly into his mind, granting him another headache. A few minutes later, the pain going through his mind finally calmed itself down and he was able to review the information he had been given. So it's Sasuke's technique that he used against Itachi. By inscribing seals onto any paper or clothes, then you can summon them instantly by placing your finger on them and using a small fraction of chakra. This allows the user to summon weapons instantly. It's useful, Kazuo thought as he analyzed the technique. Considering I could have gotten the shadow clone jutsu, however, this does leave a bad taste, Kazuo thought before releasing a long-winded sigh. Getting up from his bead, Kazuo headed outside of the tent. The moon was about to rise up on the horizon as the sun gave its lay rays of light. It's almost been a week if you consider all the times that I've died, Kazuo thought as he stared at the sky before lowering his head and looking around the camp. The shinobi were immersing themselves in the joy of a one battle as they ate some deer meat they had managed to hunt and cook. Come join us, Kazuo! One shinobi shouted as he waved at Kazuo, who nodded his head and joined the group, soon finding himself with a plate of deer meat in his hands. It was clear that they had given him more of a cut than the rest. Lifting his eyes, he saw everyone, tens of shinobi, giving him a grin and a nod. Don't worry about it, just enjoy it, the man who had called him said before releasing a laugh and patting Kazuo's back. Right, thank you, Everyone, Kazuo said as he looked at everyone and nodded. Kazuo didn't know what to think as he stuffed his mouth with deer meat. At times like this, he found it hard to think about betraying these people, but these moments were short as Kazuo lightly shook his head. Don't be dumb. If I want to survive in this hellish world, then the only way is to get strong. If I can do that, but I need to sacrifice everyone else, then so be it. I don't want to feel the pain of dying over and over again, not to mention that if I get stuck in Madara's infinite Tsukinome, then it's just game over. Even my time loop won't save me from that. Kazuo thought before taking another piece of deer meat and stuffing it in his mouth. His gaze grew more chilling every moment as he reaffirmed his resolve to only care about himself. In this world, I am alone. That's the end of this tale for now. Check out the Discord linked in the description. Make sure to like and subscribe for faster uploads. And while you're here, check out the other stories on this channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.